Brian Wilson, Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority.
6:37 on the Morning Majority. Brian Neiman and Mary Catherine Ham here in D.C. Brian Wilson live from Columbia, South Carolina.
How y'all doing?
Well, we're talking to Brent Bozell this morning, president of the Media Research Center. How's it going, Brent?
How you doing, Mary Catherine?
Hey, I want to ask you about the Marianne Gingrich story. I'm sure you've heard about it. You've spent a long time watching October surprises. This, of course, is not October, but it's sort of the same thing. How does this rank in your list?
Tasteless. Look, anyone in journalism knows that there's certain bars that you have to climb to have a respectable story. This is a dicey story. It's a very touchy story. If you're going to put it on the air, the conditions you have to raise, and I'm not saying that it's necessarily inappropriate, but for it to reach the air, there's several things you have to do. Number one, it has to be newsworthy. Number two, it has to be accurate, fair, and respectful. And number three, it has to be time appropriate. On the third point alone, it's absolutely inappropriate. There was no reason whatsoever this couldn't run Monday night. No reason. It was timed. It's got that awful taint of Radagate to it. Timed to do the most amount of damage it possibly could to Newt Gingrich's career. If you're going to pick one night to do as much damage as you possibly could, last night would have been it. In the sense that if South Carolina was make or break for him, last night could have broken his campaign if left unresolved. So based on that alone, they should have put it off if they thought it was a good story. Where the other points are concerned, is it newsworthy? Well, I don't know if it's newsworthy because we don't know if it's true. I don't know the second Mrs. Gingrich. She may be entirely honest in what she's saying. I'm not doubting her. But it is one woman who is scorned, who has every right to be upset, who is lashing out at her former ex-husband, at her ex-husband. So I don't know if it's true. And to the second point, is it fair, respectful, accurate? We don't know that either. So I think it was a mess of a story. I think it hurts the media. I think for a general election campaign voter, it might be harmful to Newt. But I suspect in the primaries, I think people are so fed up with the press, so fed up with the character assassination attacks, this thing might actually backfire in his favor.
Yeah, I think you may be right about that. But let me just make sure I understand you correctly. It's not that you don't think it was an area that should have been explored. I mean, you have no problem with the idea of exploring the area of character when it comes to candidates.
No, not at all. Not at all.
So, but it's the timing that bothers you most about all this.
Well, where's the newsflash that he had a divorce? Where's the newsflash that his marriage fell apart?
Look, I'm going to argue this. This is not going to make me popular with a lot of people, but let me just argue devil's advocate position here. You get an interview with a former wife of a guy who's running and surging in South Carolina, and she says, in the interview, Newt wanted me to have an open marriage. I don't know. I think that's interesting, and one of the definitions of news is, what's interesting. When people say interesting things, it sometimes becomes newsworthy. I don't have a problem with that being a story, but I sort of agree with you that it's the timing of all this that makes people just sort of wince. Like, why now? Why? And this is the question I asked of Brian Ross yesterday. Why now? What's the news? I think there was news, but the question is, why did they do it now?
I think they should explore it. I think that if the headline is Newt's former wife claims he wanted an open marriage, I think that is news. I think, and that's the kind of thing that, like it or not, he's got to address. I don't have a problem with that. That's why I say it's not necessarily not newsworthy. But because of this timing, you just have to wonder, what is the agenda of these people? And you have this terrible feeling in the pit of your stomach, and everyone's seeing it, that reporters aren't out there to cover news. They're out there to destroy candidates. How can I get Rick Perry? How can I get Michelle Bachmann? How can I get Herman Cain? How can I get Newt Gingrich? One by one. Rick Santorum. Now look at the story about Rick Santorum's wife when she was in her 20s, which I'm not going to repeat. How dare they write a story like that?
Yeah,
how dare they?
On that note, Brent, what do you think that GOP candidates should do next time around. They're sitting in the power seat when it comes to arranging debates. There's no reason they have to agree to every single one anchored by George Stephanopoulos. Is there another road?
Oh, you're singing my song. I mean, I can't fault the media entirely when election cycle after election cycle after election cycle, Republicans submit themselves to this by submitting themselves to these kinds of attacks from people like George Stephanopoulos. I mean, for Republicans to complain about the bad treatment they got at the hands of George Stephanopoulos, and saying he's acting like a Democrat, when in fact he was a Democrat. I mean, you do have the opportunity to say as a Republican and Republican Party, no, we're not going to do it. Look, I think by and large, I think CNN's done a very good job in covering the debates. I don't think all Fox debates have been good. You've got to put these things in perspective, but I think they have every right to go to the networks and say, enough of this. We're not going to put up with any more of these character assassinations. And if you do that, sorry, we don't need you. We've got all these other avenues to go to. We've got the alternative media, which has proven that it can reach as many Americans as your networks can. And oh, by the way, did anybody give you the memo? Your networks are collapsing.
Right, yeah, that's for sure. Now, here's a question I have for you, because a lot of Republicans complained about the John Edwards story, how it was never reported. Is that something that should have been reported? Should they have dug a little bit deeper? And would the timing would have been appropriate for that? Would that have been fair and respectful to the families?
Brian, good point. And it's another reason why I get upset at the story like this. I've got two words for you. Move on.
Yeah.
Do we not recall the thousands of times that we heard from liberals during the 90s vis-a-vis Bill Clinton and his past? Move on, move on. We need to move on and get to the serious issues of the day. That's in the past. That's been discussed. We need to move on. For goodness sakes, they set up an organization called Move On. This is how adamant they were. What hypocrites that they would go right back to it.
That's a popular term my father-in-law uses when we're talking about a subject that's a little dicey at the dinner table. He just says, let's move on.org, shall we? All right, Brent, good to have you on as always. Thanks very much.